When the Game Boy landed in 1989, plenty of arcade games were ported to it. Having games like Space Invader and Frogger on the go was a novel thing at the time. Eventually, a port of Donkey Kong made its way to the system, with enhanced graphics and special Super Game Boy features. Mario's goal is to climb to the top of the rafters and rescue Pauline, just like the original. And that's all there is to it. Simple as can be, get the girl and repeat. Until you beat the original stages, then Donkey Kong wakes back up. From here, the real game starts. As you probably guessed, Donkey Kong for Game Boy is much different than the arcade original. You still play as Mario, trying to rescue Pauline, but instead of trying to climb to the top of each level, you'll need to carry a key hidden throughout each level to the exit door. Sounds simple, and for the most part, it is. For the Game Boy, Donkey Kong looks incredibly impressive. It was clear Nintendo had come a long way from Super Mario Land, with expressive characters and a huge variety of locations for each level. The sheer number of stages crammed into this cart boggles my mind, at exactly 101. For the most part, the enemies are varied between locations, and Mario himself has a lot more personality in this than he does in a lot of his current outings. Each set of levels is divided into 4 sets, 3 actual levels, and then a fight with DK. After every 4 stages, a cutscene typically plays to set up the next series of levels. Not only are these entertaining, but they set up the gimmick for the coming levels nicely. Instead of a barrage of text boxes, these scenes give the player the context they need, and then slowly introduce them in the coming levels. Each one is well animated, gets the point across, and ultimately makes you want to keep playing, just like every game's cutscene should. All of this is accentuated by the game's soundtrack. Due to its limitations, the Game Boy isn't exactly known for being a powerhouse for music, but Donkey Kong managed to have a pretty diverse soundtrack. Most tracks are fairly chill background music for every level, giving the sense that there isn't too much of an urgency to figure out every puzzle so quickly. Meanwhile, the transition in boss music is fast-paced, especially when DK is on screen. It's the same theme every time, but it's also one that sticks. You want to keep playing, more than just how addictive the game can get, but because you want to toss those barrels back in DK's big stupid face. And that brings us to Donkey Kong's most interesting aspect, the gameplay. The game plays mostly by the same rules as the original. Mario can't jump on enemies to kill them, and one hit is all it takes to do them in. There aren't any traditional power-ups such as mushrooms or fire flowers either, but instead the hammer from the arcade original. Mario does have a large variety of moves he's able to do, like handstands, backflips, triple jumps, nearly everything he would be able to later do in Super Mario 64 outside of wall jumps and attacking. With that in mind, Donkey Kong plays much different than any other Mario platformer from this time. And that's what makes it so fun. You'll be using your brain just as much as your reflexes to solve each level. Sometimes you'll need to conquer a switch puzzle, while other times it's about keeping the hammer long enough to kill a certain enemy, or figure out how to use the ladder and platform placements to make your own way through. Lives are in abundance with Donkey Kong. Locating all 3 of Pauline's items will send the player off to a bonus stage, which is an easy way to rack up a ton of lives as quickly as possible. You're gonna need these for the later levels because as fun as Donkey Kong is, it's also challenging, sometimes to the point of frustration. It's not always clear what or how you're supposed to beat some of these levels, leading to the time running out or having to restart the entire stage over. Some of the enemy placement is devilish, and while Mario can triple jump and do handsprings, his regular jump can feel kind of hard to judge, especially on conveyor belts. Having 101 levels may also seem overbearing to some. While most of these levels are fairly bite-sized and easy to blaze through, there are some, especially in the later levels, that are rather bogged down and slow due to some of the gimmicks. For the most part, Mario's moves allow you to plow through otherwise slow sections quickly, but only if you're confident you can time everything properly. Above all though, Donkey Kong is just plain fun to play. It's an often overlooked game in the Game Boy library for one reason or another, be it was overshadowed by the Donkey Kong Land releases, or because it came out much later in the Game Boy's life, 1994 to be exact. In any case, Donkey Kong didn't seem to get its due until more recent years. Strange to think that's the case too, since Donkey Kong was one of the first Game Boy games with Super Game Boy features. Slap the cart into your Super Game Boy and you're greeted with an exclusive border to the game, better sound, and plenty of color. Granted, none of these affect the gameplay at all, but it's nice to see it in action. What sucks is that this is limited solely to the Super Nintendo itself. Donkey Kong has been re-released on the 3DS Virtual Console, but just as a regular Game Boy release. I'm not sure why Nintendo has opted not to allow this feature at all, especially considering how big of a deal they were making it at the time the game came out in '94, but you won't be getting it with that version. That's a pretty minor nitpick though, and if you're wanting a challenge with an often overlooked game, give Donkey Kong a shot. It's pretty cheap on the eShop if you want it quick and want to take it with you alongside your newer games. Once you do, you'll wonder why you never heard about it before.